What can I get? Judas Priest. This ain't angry enough. I gotta go further than that. I found Venom and Motorhead, you know, and all the fast, aggressive stuff.
But back then, nobody had heard anything like that. It was the heaviest, fastest, craziest music you could hear. And that was the birth of thrash metal.
It's one of the names that when I heard it, I'm like, yeah, that's us. It's not like, it's like, well, we're not kind of like that. We're not kind of like this. And somebody said thrash, I'm like, that's a good name.
In the odd live stream on social media, hell, even ambling about the byways of the Arizona desert, I'm routinely asked for recommendations on everything from films to books to bitchin' metal. Yet one genre recurs with a frequency to rival a Zakk Wylde pinch harmonic. The metaliferous mega genre that kept metal alive in the Nirvana nut-hugging 90s. Thrash metal. And I mean, sure, I could give a bog standard bitch-made reprisal like, say, Get Into Metallica, but really, who wants to have that much gay sex? Don't answer that question, Kanye. Without further fallationary references, accept this humble missive from the metal mythos. A genre-appropriate 6 selections of RazörForce approved thrash.
In Arizona, people are really starved for entertainment, and you really feel nice playing for people because they're very appreciative of it and they really enjoy it. There's not so much of a band scene there, you know. So it's really nice. I think Arizona's a great place to play in, and it's not as cool as Seattle because there's not like 2 million bands coming out of there. But hopefully we can change that.
My home state of Arizona is often seen as a physical and figurative wasteland from which no conceivable culture can escape, which is wild considering Californians can't seem to stop moving here to parasitically leech off our no conceivable culture. You want culture? Eat some goofy-ass Greek yogurt and get the shiny shit out of my state! Truth is, in the 80s at least, Arizona boasted a tight little tech thrash triforce featuring Flotsam and Jetsam, the socialist Simpson Sacred Reich, and the enduringly excellent but oh so oft ignored Atrophy. Shockingly, 2 of the 3 tongs of the Trinity are from the land of Fenton Filiberto's Tucson, while only the one, Flotsam and Jetsam, were from the capital of Arizona, Phoenix, the very same neighborhood where I grew up, in fact. But while Flotsam would gain momentary notoriety as the band that launched Jason Newsted into Metallica, the other 2 tugged on their twig and berries for a bit before biting it by the early 90s. Sacred Reich turned into a pinko Pantera and sucked ass all the way through the 90s, while Atrophy outright ended it all like so many others, which is a damn shame because of the 3 bands in question, it's Atrophy that absolutely mauls.
The outcast of society, that silence.
And like many late 80s thrash outfits, for a minute there, they were more productive than a Mormon vagina. Just 2 years later, cranking out a follow-up to the tech thrash masterpiece, Socialized Hate, that got groovier and heavier in equal measure. The result? The improbably underrated Violent by Nature.
Violent by Nature!
But it was 1990, they were on Roadrunner Records, and they weren't named King Diamond. Worse still, Roadrunner was still a decade or so away from the seismic success of Slipknot and Nickelback, so with less support than Lizzo's tits, the band languished for a beat, toured where they could, and finally succumbed to a flannel-plated pounding courtesy of the grunge wave, one of the earliest, most tragic recorded casualties of such. But fortunately, like every WWE wrestler of the last 2 decades, it wasn't over. In 2022, a package featuring the first 2 albums was released, and it must have kicked up enough of an Indian food stink to warrant the first new Atrophy album in nearly 25 years. Asylum!
Now the eagles have fallen, the vultures will lay their claim. So come on down, you're next in line, we got plenty of time to spare. In a world gone mad, it's a shame to have to be judged by the one old man.
Atrophy are ass-cavingly good, and it's only accounting for my regional bias that has them anywhere but the top of my thrash metal Mount Rushmore. Next!
Am I going to get targeted for what I'm going to write on the album? Is it going to get banned from going on YouTube? You don't know. How far are they going to restrict us? It's slightly in the back of my mind what's going to happen. I do write some strange things on social media sometimes. I think, am I going to get a knock on the door? I don't know. So You just have to take that chance and see where it goes, really. But I can't be silenced, that's for sure.
Continuing our killer bands from far-flung regions theme, while the Bay Area boom was still in its earliest extremities, a band from Bristol were quietly cooking up a righteous rainbow stew of venom-esque first-wave black metal, thunderous thrash, and even a slight peppering of a genre they may have actually helped to name, death metal, and they answered to the name of Onslaught. So Venom-influenced, in fact, that like the Newcastle Kings in question, they too employed their bassist to double as their damn singer with all the incumbent limitations thereof. But after locking down a deal for the follow-up, the band evidently acknowledged they required a dedicated mouth on the microphone, and so Cy Keeler screamed his way through the late 80s thrash classic by the appropriate name of The Force. Keeler would sadly be kicked off the follow-up in Search of Sanity by what amounts to record company meddling. But the good news, the replacement would be a familiar face to the metal mythos faithful, the grand poobah of Grim Reaper, the recently departed but equally beloved Steve Grimmett.
We'd never actually played with him before. He'd been in the band like 2 months before he'd actually sort of sung with the rest of us. It was quite strange, really. It worked really well. It just clicked together. Things just fallen into place.
Despite a stunner of an album, it would be the final onslaught from Onslaught until almost out of nowhere, metal became cool again in or around 2004. And so in '07, Onslaught set to work, cranking out a modernized metal classic by the bitchin'-ass name of Killing Peace. A succession of stellar albums followed, with the most recent of all new material being perhaps the strongest of the bunch.
We only hear what they want us to. They want to make us bleed. All down to the ground. When the circus comes to town. All down to the clouds. Watch your puppets dance and drown.
I love 80s thrash almost as much as I love early black metal. Onslaught are an innovator of both, and they deserve all of your attention. Next, you limberdick dong hammocks.
Also in Washington today, Mr. Gorbachev's foreign minister met with Secretary of State.
Like many people in the Bay Area, Lee Altus has been closely following this week's summit meeting in Washington. But unlike most, he has the perspective of one who's grown up in the Soviet Union.
Relations between, the United States and Russia, they've always been like enemies.
Lee, his mother and family immigrated to the United States 6 years ago.
People over there, they'd never seen anything like this. When we came here and me and my mama went to Safeway, it was like a museum for me.
Lee has welcomed the changes. When he had to give up his childhood sport of ice hockey when his family settled in San Francisco, he picked up the guitar and formed his own band. His group plays music that he never heard while growing up. His heavy metal band, Heathen, has sold 50,000 records, and they even have their own music video.
Don't let them steal your life away. No.
From the technicality of Atrophy to the unbridled aggression of Onslaught, the subject of slot number 4 I would describe as incrementally more musical, perhaps even progressive.
What is speed metal? Is it just like a bunch of idiots going as fast as they can? I've never played speed metal, really. I've just played heavy metal. It's like that's the way I think of melodic, cool ways of changing really fast rhythms and brutal riffs and stuff.
It's all just metal, basically. That's all it is.
Not a term I generally associate with thrash metal, or my music collection, or heterosexuality, yet stunningly, inexplicably, in defiance of dick-possessing metalheads everywhere, Heathen pulled it off again and again and a damn again, though in my own defense, their inaugural album, Breaking the Silence, was more pounding than it was progressive. And by pounding, I mean like Glenn Greenwald in a sundress. Look, any band that starts out an album with a song called Goblin's Blade has officially earned your listenership and undying devotion, and not one of you preemie pricks better pretend otherwise. While the entire band were more than competent, a star soon emerged in ageless, uber-genius guitarist, Lee Altus. And it's on the sophomore album that Lee and Heathen in general would take flight and truly soar. Kicking off a record with a tech thrash takedown of the communist cult of Jim Jones is never an unwelcome augury. After calling it a career in the early 90s like nearly everyone else on this list, they too would come to kick our skulls in around 2010 for the killer comeback, Evolution of Chaos. But a wellspring of new music was sadly not to be, for it wasn't long before Lee Altus was purloined by the almighty Exodus, who understandably occupied much of his touring time thereafter. Though while working around Altus's schedule, they did somehow manage to crank out another excellent album, Empire of the Blind, for which the worst thing I can say about it is it sort of sounds like Exodus. And if the worst thing you can say about a band is, hey, they're an awful lot like another killer thrash band, you know you're doing 190 down Badass Boulevard for a fact. You best be listening to Heathen, bitch.
We want to write about the bad things in the world. And the thrash metal music give us a chance to scream it out. We cannot change anything, but we can scream it out.
From the land of sauerkraut and crap-smeared coffee tables, relax, I'm half German, comes yet another ageless icon of multiple metal subgenres simultaneously. Yet whereas Onslaught emerged in the mid-'80s after several extreme metal demu genres were already well into existence, the German metal murdercraft of Sodom helped create several of them outright. A band every bit as beloved for the first wave black metal of Under the Sign of Hell, as for their classic period pulverizing thrash metal. But best of all, much like more than a few of the bands featured to this point, they've authored some of their strongest material in the 20-year period which we presently inhabit. A 21st century siege that saw stunning releases like the monumental M16, the unceasing destruction of Decision Day, and an out-of-nowhere 2006 self-titled album which I still spin to this day.
We won't fail, we will not tire, rebellion to the godless cry. Axis of evil must be opposed.
Most laudably of all, in switching on thrash metal mode, Sodom did not deny nor diminish the many merits of their early black metal output, notably re-recording an entire album of that early material, The Final Sign of Evil, in tribute to the period, and even adding the odd black metal tune to more recent offerings, while Pantera puss out and pretend their early hair metal albums never even occurred, as if they were all on vacation in Posertopia till 1990. Sodom actually celebrates the pioneering influence of their first wave black metal, Assault, which may be the first recorded example of a German successfully carrying off a war on two fronts. Sodom slays. Next!
Those anti-drug thrash metal bands. From hell. Are you guys really anti-drugs?
No, we're not. We're just full of shit. Why'd you decide to play heavy metal, speed metal instead of, say, something more commercial like Bon Jovi?
Hairspray costs too much.
Just shows the aggressiveness is what we like.
I can't afford a haircut either, especially this guy.
I hate to say it, we still have melody involved in all that.
You don't
too.
hate to say that.
No, I don't hate to say it.
I just still have some melody in the music.
Yeah, there's a lot of melody involved.
Aggressiveness with melody.
The San Francisco Bay Area is much more than the land of milk and man sex. It also happens to be the Tigris and Euphrates of thrash. But while much is made of the Big Four, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer, the Bay Area had its very own Big Six. Those being Death Angel, Exodus, Laws Rocket, Testament, Violence, and for my money, the most sonically fascinating of them all, Forbidden. One part tech thrash, one part prog, all with the soaring screams of Judas Priest or Iron Maiden. Put it all together and what do you get? A thrash metal band with a thick black Sharpie underline beneath the word metal.
What you see, bring you the through eyes of
Who's your influences? Like on
Influences?
Your vocals?
On vocals?
Uh-huh.
Halford. Halford's a good influence. And you know, all those guys too. King Diamond. I like King Diamond, which a lot of people hate King Diamond, I know, but I like King Diamond.
We're influenced a lot by Maiden and Priest because of how long they've lasted in the music business.
Look, I love thrash. Why else would I be making a Metal Mythhouse about it? But it's gayer than 20 dudes blowing 30 dudes when the band is all thrash and no metal. When the sonic ancestry of Sabbath, Priest, Deep Purple, or Motorhead is instead exchanged for rolling fields of fret chugging. Look, I love headbanging as much as the next guy. Unless, of course, the next guy is Kamala Harris. But unless there's some kind of song under all those palm mutes and pinch harmonics, what are you even doing here, folks? And in almost an inversion of prior bands featured on this list, Forbidden hit the year 1990 like Will Smith hitting an unfunny comedian, or another man on Will Smith's wife, cranking out a classic to rival anything pooped out by the bitch-made Big Four.
This band doesn't do drugs anymore, you could say, which we were in the past, totally into getting high all the time, which really brought us down a lot. We weren't even the best we could possibly be. So, you know, we just happened like the song was written, which you'd have to read the lyrics, so step by step.
Step by step, it's the downfalls you take with drug and the upward steps that you take to recovering and bettering yourself as a person, in our case, musicians.
surviving, hanging by a thread. Step by step, it's time to turn the table. Step by step, society's not done with you.
Twisted into form, implemented prog without the pussery, shoved it in a blender with their already impressive speed metal proclivities, and the end result was a thrash metal masterwork. Sadly, from there, Forbidden went down like a Malaysian jetliner. The groove metal goat wank hit them like a Mack truck, and after 2 anemic 90s efforts and little to no tour support, they quietly called it a career. A reunion in 2010 did produce the Omega Wave record, but by then, the magic, along with Russ Anderson's voice, had gotten up, excused itself, and left the room. And if his rapidly ballooning weight was any indication, his pancreatic function went well ahead of him. But no vagaries of the past can prevail against the band's musical legacy, for the titanic twosome of Forbidden Evil and Twisted into Form deserve every Rivethead's undivided allegiance for putting the metal back in thrash metal. And speaking of such,
the Canadian music media and the Canadian music establishment, which is be record companies, management, agents, didn't understand thrash metal. They didn't understand what was happening with bands like Metallica or Slayer. They weren't on the bandwagon, and they were still looking for, you know, the success with bands like Coney Hatch and that kind of stuff, which is not an insult to those bands, but it's just they had their heads up their ass.
you know, a band is bitching when I recorded an entire Metal Mythos episode on them, and I still have 700 more things to say. Canada's finest export since Norm Macdonald, a punishingly heavy inheritor of the iconoclastic legacy of Motorhead and Exciter, and as their most recent release, Cycle of Contempt, ably illustrates, they're still slinging out six-string savagery 40 years on.
Distant eyes watching us for centuries since our birth. Those who are responsible for putting us on earth.
Razör is a titanic tale of a small-town thrash band, easily the equal of any American act from the Bay Area or otherwise, nevertheless relegated to also-ran status by a combination of their Canadian location and a record company too dazzled by their shiny new toy, Lee Aaron, to push anyone the hell else. And it's a shame, because Razör began early enough that with a proper push from the pricks holding the purse strings, their career could have followed a similar trajectory to other early 80s thrash bands who, by the early 90s, were jollying around in a Jaguar and picking out shiny new mountainside mansions.
I don't think they ever really fully understood thrash. I still am. Well, I am thankful that they wanted to sign us and that they did. I think maybe in hindsight it was a mistake for Razör to sign with them because we were in the shadow of a lot of music that wasn't like us at all. And therefore, we weren't getting the special attention we needed at that time. If we had signed with a label like Metal Blade or Megaforce or Music for Nations that were more metal-oriented at the time, that would have been better for us. But we didn't. We took the Canadian deal. We wanted to stay in Canada. And I think looking back, that might have been a mistake for us, yeah.
But all that is piss and bullshit. What matters is the metal. And right from the fore, Razör rocked the fillings out of our teeth. Better still, successive releases would embrace an even more melodic sensibility paired with pounding aggression such that Razör would, from release to release and even track to track, tightrope walk with aplomb between almost anthems and dick-punching power thrash. Perhaps most impressively when original vocalist Sheepdog, whose soaring screams helped define the established era of the band, moseyed along to other endeavors. Rather than attempt the impossible feat of cloning the cat, they enlisted Bob Reed and his deeper, more aggressive approach to cut the shockingly killer Shotgun Justice. Really, with one minor stumble in 1997's Decibels, the entire Razör discography is stacked to the sky with speed thrash classics. And if your dick done works, you best be bumping their new one, Cycle of Contempt. Classic thrash acts don't grow on trees, and I can count the number that still rule on under 5 fingers, but Razör don't just qualify for the thrash metal Mount Rushmore. If there were any justice in this world, they'd be more than regularly acknowledged as one of the bands that built the damn mountain. Well, there you have it, folks. A RazörForce approved primer on one of the heaviest genres ever unearthed. So the next time some simp asks you, where should I start with thrash metal? Tell him to immolate Metallica, stuff the Slayer, and point him to this immortal missive from the Metal Mythos. I'm Razor Fist. Godspeed.
Being kicked out of Metallica, a lot of people said, has fueled me to be faster and better in Megadeth, and that's kind of true, but I was better and faster than them when I was in Metallica.